let's get stuck into the destruction of Chelsea. And like, how often do I ever get to say that? 4-1 to Barcelona in the second leg. Chelsea have now lost to Barcelona in the semi-finals 3 seasons in a row. This defeat was particularly catastrophic. This was just carnage. I did not see 4-1 coming. Did you?
I don't know. I think...
Don't say you did. Surely you didn't.
The reason being, it was always going to be such a tall order, and it required a Herculean effort to try and turn this tie around. And obviously scoring a lot of goals. I said this last week. Scoring a lot of goals against Barcelona, really bloody hard. To score a lot of goals, you need to push forward, leaving yourself exposed to Barcelona. So I did see Barcelona scoring because Chelsea had to push forward to try and get goals. So they were going to leave themselves massively exposed and open at times. So I think that's why I thought the tie was away from them. Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't just a case of, right, we need to go out and get 2 goals, or we just need to stop them scoring. You know, when you think back to last year when Chelsea went away, they were 1-0 up. They'd come home with the 1-0. And then they had, you know, that was a different situation. You've got to stop Barcelona scoring, right? If you can do that, you win. Or you get another one and you sit back. It wasn't like that. They had to go all out and stop Barcelona scoring. And you're also playing a Barcelona who are coming in, you know, not that they're going to have huge pressure on their shoulders anyway, but like coming in 4-1 up, they can go out and enjoy it. What a dangerous way to play Barcelona, where they can go, we are 4-1 up, we can go out and have a nice time, we can go and play the football we love. I thought they played, it's a difficult one, right? Because you look at the scoreline, you think, like, terrible, you know, 3 goals in the first half. But arguably, I thought Chelsea played better in the first 20 minutes or so. They created more, they looked less flat than the previous week. But then I just think Barcelona were better than last week as well, and that there was a kind of freedom in the way that they played and a added layer of confidence, which, you know, I didn't think Barcelona needed, but it turns out they have in their locker.
I think I definitely didn't feel like Chelsea went into the game with a confidence, with an air that this was going to be something that they could overturn the first leg. I didn't get that sense of, you know, we always talk about Chelsea being a mentality monster. They just didn't seem like they had that hope and belief that they would actually...
But yeah, could you though?
Which is completely understandable, but also it's Chelsea and weirder things and wilder things have happened and you still have 90 minutes to play to make a difference. But I didn't get that same sense. I don't know, did you? Like, did you feel like there was actually that even initial, even little belief that they could have overcome that massive hill?
I'm not sure if there's any team that could overcome a 4-1 deficit to Barcelona. I don't know, you know, you tell me. I was never a professional athlete, but like, I don't know how you go into that game, what mindset you go into that game. You know, Soph and I were talking about it and she was like, they just need to go in and try and win this tie. They just need to win this leg, right? Even if it's 1-0, they need to just focus and try and win this leg. And it must be a really hard mindset to get players in going into a match like that, because realistically, you know, you're not going to win it. So you're kind of, but you also know you're going to play a game plan that is going to try and get you to win it, which is going to expose you, which means you're probably going to concede more. So it must be like an absolute minefield in your head going into that situation. So, but as a professional athlete, you're not going to go in and go, well, look, fuck it, the tie's gone. Which I would argue they did at halftime with the substitutions they made. They went, right, we need to think about Manchester United at the weekend.
I was going to say, let's definitely talk about the squad, the starting 11. Bonpasseur had made 3 changes from the first leg, bringing in Niamh Charles, Naomi Girma and Nuskin as well. Rach, what did you kind of make of the lineup initially? And then you mentioned there, obviously, after halftime, it kind of felt like maybe she was preparing for the fact that game had already been thrown. The Champions League wasn't going to be something they could achieve. And actually, you've got to have a look at the longer term vision of how you are for the rest of the season and what players you've got on rotation. I
was a little surprised, but also understood what she was trying to do. You know, I'm a big fan of Niamh Charles. I think understandably this hasn't been her best season so far. You know, she was out with injury for such a long time.
I don't feel like she's ever fully come back and found her proper form again. And I feel that there's been, I think in the last Lionesses game, she got caught kind of backtracking, ball watching. And I don't think like I don't know, I don't think she's got back to where she was previously before the injury. And that's absolutely fine. That's obviously going to understandably take some time. But it felt like to me in this particular game, she was a little bit of a weak link. I don't know, Rach, what did you think?
So, you know, it's not all on one player, but when I saw the starting lineup, I was like, okay, she wants to push Baltimore up. She wants to have a bit more of an attacking threat, which I understood. But I think for Niamh, having not had that many games under her belt and, you know, confidence-wise, it was going to be a big ask. So it didn't surprise me that that's where some of the areas of success were for Barcelona. But as I said, it's not like all on one player. I thought Nuskin did pretty well, all things considered. I think she's a Rolls Royce of a player. I probably would have had her more involved in the first leg, but she was dogged and determined at times, and I do really rate her. But and I understand Germa starting with Bjorn being injured, but then you're looking at that back line and thinking 2 changes to a back line.
It's pretty big.
That kind of cause, there were some moments where I think it was the Bonmati goal where they were so out of position, and it was a bit of a like, she's your player, no, she's your player. And it's like, well, guess she's nobody's player. So there were moments like that, which again, you can understand. You're trying to push up, you're trying to score. Like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place going into that game. And I could understand the starting 11, but equally I could see where there was going to be issues.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you mentioned there, obviously, the Bonmati goal. What a solo effort.
She only put it through the goal.
The power on her is just absolutely unbelievable. But you're completely right. I think Chelsea were completely picked apart, and it didn't feel like anyone was really taking responsibility for that. And the players were kind of looking around them going, well, I don't actually know what's happened. And for that to happen in the first 30 minutes, I think that was when it kind of felt like nailing the coffin vibes already. But we can talk about how unstoppable Barcelona just feel at the moment. They've scored 44 goals in 10 games in Europe this season. What do you do with that? I don't even know what you do with that kind of European dominance. But yeah, just touching back on what you were saying there, Rach, I know you kind of sort of alluded to it before, but despite the result being the same, do we think Chelsea's performance was an improvement from that first leg? So this time around, they had 17 shots, 9 of which were on target. In that first leg, they had just 2 shots on target. Last year, the aggregate score was 2-1 to Barcelona, and this year it's 8-2. So some improvement in terms of first to second leg, but in terms of how we sit now from last year, it's a completely different ball game, completely different.
Yeah, statistically, I think Chelsea were more in the game in terms of opportunities created, particularly towards the end. They really tested Kata Cole in goal and obviously got a goal back. They were creating more because they had to. They were less, not that they were less shell-shocked, but they only had one game plan, which was to go and score goals. They had no other choice but to try and do that. So, understandably, you see a bit more than that. But as I said, then really hard to analyse that when you're going to leave yourself exposed and you're up against Barcelona. So they're going to score against you. So arguably, yes, especially in that first 20 minutes, they looked better. Overall, and we touched on this, and I think someone asked us this on Twitter, but we kind of covered it a bit last week, was that, they were questioning whether Chelsea were overhyped by the English media. And I think that's because we've talked about the unbeaten record and everything else and how many games Chelsea have gone unbeaten and how they're in an FA Cup final and they won the League Cup. That's factual, right? That's not necessarily blowing smoke up a team's arse when they are top of the league. They are unbeaten. They have won a League Cup final and they are in the FA Cup final. That's just the case. I think what sometimes happens is we don't, as I said, always interrogate those results. And I've touched on it a number of times this season, that performance-wise, Chelsea have struggled and we've not necessarily seen them at their best consistently enough, which is understandable. You have a new manager in, you've got quite a few new players, you're taking over from the Hayes dynasty, so that is understandable. Now they're coming up against the best team in Europe, if not the world, in the biggest competition in Europe. That's where you're going to be seriously challenged, and you need to be perfect when you play Barcelona. So that's going to get exposed. So yes, in that respect, it is a backward step, I think, for Chelsea. I think some Barca fans will come to us and be like, see, we beat you every year, you're shit. Last year, bloody close. Last year was super close. So I do think it's a bit of a backward step and it's really unfortunate, but I also think they're going to learn so much from this for next year. And I think those lessons will be very, very valuable, because losing like that, that's going to bloody hurt. You tell me, I don't know if you've ever been on the tail end of a big defeat, but
many a time.
I imagine you take some I imagine you take some huge lessons.
Yeah, you definitely do. I think sometimes the huge defeats are they are anomalies, and sometimes the huge defeats come off the back of, a particularly bad run of form that you just think, Christ, how bad can it get? And I think that's the thing about Chelsea. The result and the 8-2 aggregate score is clearly an anomaly. This wasn't a Champions League doubleheader that went their way, but you can't sit there and say, well, they really haven't been performing at the absolute top standard. They don't have the players. They can't squad. They can't rotate their squad. The manager's awful. There's no factors of failure that go into what's happened. Sometimes a team just can't perform, and sometimes you have to really say, well, actually, we were facing a Barcelona that were absolutely at their strongest. I mean, it's going to be seriously helpful to see how Arsenal fare against Barcelona on the 24th of May. I mean, I absolutely can't call it. There's an energy and enthusiasm and a hope around Arsenal. And I know the minute that whistle went on that Arsenal game, about 20,000 Arsenal fans started ploughing into their search results, Portugal tickets, I'm going out there, flights are booked, hotels are booked. So I think the contingency is going to be big, and like Arsenal fan base, but also Barcelona fan base is going to be the biggest rivalry, to be fair, the fans going at each other. But that is going to be, I think, one of the games of 2025, but obviously everything in the Euros. But Sonia Bampasta said after the match, Barcelona are a really good team. The difference between the teams is not that much. One team has been clinical in both games, but my team weren't.
I think that's an understatement.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of
the first game you got your tactics wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of calling it what it is. It's not really giving us much that's not completely different. But
no, but to say that there's not that much difference between the teams, like in that first leg especially, you got your tactics wrong. Mm-hmm. You set yourself up to make the second leg so goddamn hard. And like, you have to be close in those ties going into the second leg to allow you to then try and play a game where you try and win, you try and score goals. If you're already falling down, like it's not that it wasn't that Barcelona were just clinical. I mean, Chelsea had 2 shots on target in the first leg.
Barcelona you're not creating chances, and they're only going to be
Barcelona
far
were superior, and Chelsea played poorly. Like, so it's not like it was close. I think the second leg, then you make the game very, very difficult for yourself, and you almost, against a team like Barca who are clinical, you set yourself up almost for failure because you have to play that kind of more attacking style of football.
Well, what it has done is knock Chelsea out, so their elusive Champions League hopes and ambitions will be thrown over to next season. I mean, to be fair, Emma Hayes must be a little bit happy about what's happened. It could be a bit of a kick in the teeth to leave the squad after decades of trying to get that trophy, and then it happening the year that you leave. That's always a kicker. So happy days for Emma Hayes. Barcelona are obviously now on course for a 3rd successive Champions League title, something only Lyon, who won 5 in a row from 2016 to 2020, have previously achieved. Arsenal, Barca, do we think there is a chance that Arsenal do something magic, they overturn Barca and create history for the club, create a magic moment for the fans? Do we think it's possible?
I mean,
Rach, say yes. Come on, give us some
possible.
Hope. Yeah,
anything's possible,
go.
Right? There's a small chance, of course. But my concern is Arsenal great over 2 legs. This is 1 leg. And I think we saw that when Chelsea lost to Barcelona in the final. They were great over 2 legs. Even in the final, they were poor in the first half, better in the second. Like, they were a quick study, but it's not quick enough when you're already, 3-0 down to Barcelona. So that concerns me in terms of the single game thing and how quickly they can adapt to that. My other concern is whether Arsenal are willing to stray from their style. I think they're very wedded to the Arsenal way. And I think up against a team like Barcelona, I don't think you can go in thinking you're going to dominate the game and you're going to put your stamp on it and you're going to play your football, and they're going to have to adapt. I think, much like Spain, they're a team you go out against going, do you know what? We need to be comfortable and disciplined out of possession and be okay with that and get them on the counter and test Catacol in goal to have a chance. And I'm not sure Arsenal are willing to stray away from the Arsenal way in order to do that. So that's what concerns me. Also, Barcelona are just bloody brilliant.
All right, so put your flagpole in the sand. It's Barca for the win.
Listen, I would love Arsenal to win it. I'd love an English team to win it. But unfortunately, I think so.
But not 4-1. Surely it's got to be a little bit closer than that. Or maybe it's a draw heading into penalties. The Champions League decided on penalties would be one of the most iconic outcomes this year. And Arsenal winning would explode. It would be like, there'd be a festival in Portugal.
Do you know what I will say? I reckon they're going to wrap up Daphne van Domselaar in bubble wrap and not have her play until the final. Because I'm really surprised she was available for that game yesterday. Because from what was said around her injury, that was a kind of longer term injury. And, they were very cagey about whether she was even going to be available for the game. So I reckon she was out there for that game, and then they're going to be like, all right, you rest now until the final because we're going to need you for the final.
This just like this, just hands up,
Yeah.
resting on a pillow, like someone
hands
like
in like cotton wool.
yeah, like just like a palm leaf blowing in the background, some grapes being fed to her, that kind of vibe.
Just makes me think of like, the way little kittens just lie like this with their
Stay
just in the air.
safe, DVD. A big game ahead of you in less than a month's time. Chelsea's attention now obviously turning back to the WSL. They're playing Man United tomorrow night and could win the league
tough, right?
if Arsenal fail to beat Aston Villa. It's getting to the spicy end of the season.
But coming off that loss and coming in to have to play Manchester United in 3 days time, like that's tough. That's where the mentality test is going to be now.
100%. They could have things wrapped up early doors and create a whole they can just relax, put their feet up and create a whole host of happy memories for the next couple of weeks, really, in terms of the league.